Hello and welcome to another episode of Kahawa Nagowi, conversations you will have with your pastor, or you want to have with your pastor, but you don't. I'm Gowi Makodinga, your host for this podcast. And on the couch with me, we are having you again. is
Round
Ernest
two.
Wamboy. Round two.
Yeah.
Karibu.
Thank you.
If you're joining us for the very first time, please subscribe and tell a friend to tell a friend. Even put a note on that notification button. Just click on it and you'll get to know much more on when we update another one. You've been on this show before in our previous podcast. For those who are checking for the first time, please just introduce yourself.
Yeah. Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ernest Wamboye. I am a follower of Jesus Christ. I am a husband, been married to my wife, Waturi, since September 2012. And I am also a father. Have 3 children, Tandy, Ivana, and Theo, who are ages 8, 6, and 2, respectively. I run a ministry called the Relationship Center, which is an organization that promotes and defends family values. And under that ministry, we have a pornography addiction recovery program for men and another for women called Powerhouse for the men and Girl Power for the women. We have a singles ministry called Boy Meets Girl. And we are online as well. We've got an award-winning blog, penstrokes.co.ke. We've got a podcast, the Relationship Center podcast. And we're also the guys behind Logos, the Ultimate Bible board game. So we are all about the ministry. And that's a wrap about me.
Dude, man, you have accomplished a lot in such a, what I'd call, a short time in your life. Mm-hmm. And I really do want to appreciate and celebrate you.
Thank you.
I mean, people would think that you're very busy. It's not that you're very busy. You're busy doing what you are passionate about.
Yes.
And I want to just celebrate you in what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm humble Goy.
Let me ask you, if you are your young self at 13, 14 years of age,
yes,
what were you thinking you were going to be doing?
I was dead convinced I'd be in the world of science or the world of, let's call it the world of science, because my parents are heavily slanted towards the sciences. My dad is a doctor, vet doctor, all the way to PhD level. My mom also went through vet science. So we grew up with scientists in the house. Now the funny thing is that all their children are in the arts. All, without exemption. From my sister to me to my younger brother and sister, all of us are in the arts. So, seeing the way our parents were raising us, I thought the whole idea of
you guys were rebels.
a doctor.
You were like, no, hell no.
Oh man, yeah. Or engineering at best. I even selected engineering when I was in high school. You know, the help courses. You know,
but it didn't work out for you.
Yeah, and I'm glad I didn't go that path because I would not be pursuing my true potential.
So this must have been during COVID. You and I were guests who were recording on a show, on a podcast. This was David Courier. And you are ahead of me.
Yes.
So just, about podcasts, sometimes we just record a number of podcasts in a day. So you and the podcast guest before me. So I came in early and I sat in and listened to you. And you were talking about addiction to pornography.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, man, this is some crazy stuff you're talking about and how it is. And as I was thinking about who to have on this podcast, and we're talking about marriage and sex in marriage, I was like, I'm going to have you.
Oh, thanks for considering me.
And one is because I have a book that's signed by you, Last in the City.
Yes.
And tell me more about that book, Last in the City.
So that book was published in 2014.
Yes.
And it was published out of a personal struggle with porn and masturbation.
Yes.
So I was addicted, and by the grace of God, I got out of it. And after I got out of it, I mean, I was my life moved on, but I started getting convicted to really help other people who are going through it, because as I ministered to men in campuses, because on weekends I'd go preaching in campuses, I'd have many men who'd come and just tell me, hey, please pray for me, I'm struggling with porn, struggling with masturbation. And I tell them, hey, I've gone through the same thing, this is what I did, this is how I came out, and I'd see success, I'd see results, so I thought, why not write a book about it? So that's how the book came about.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
So the book is about your journey or principles, to be able to overcome.
Yeah. So it's not exclusively dedicated to my journey, but I do talk about my purity journey here and there. I used it mainly to just draw out biblical truths concerning how to live a pure life, the pitfalls, how to overcome, and how the wisdom of God can help us navigate those struggles. Yeah.
All right. Then you wrote another book.
Yeah.
And this was much more recent.
Yes.
It's called Holy Joe.
Yes.
A book talk about that.
So Holy Joe came 2 years after Last on the City.
Yeah.
And Holy Joe is a pocket handbook on sexual purity. And we did that for the campus students mainly, because campus students don't have a lot of money, and the cost of publishing Last on the City, would realize not every campus student would buy one. So he said, why don't you get Holy Joe for like 150 shillings as you wait to buy Last in the City. And what we did is that we dedicated Holy Joe to the life of Joseph. And we just looked at his life intently. We looked at several scriptures. I found out
Joseph in the Bible, in the book of Genesis.
Yes, in the book of in the book of Genesis. So while writing that book, I did some research, and I got to find out that there are some hidden scriptures that talk about the life of Joseph. Like Joseph is mentioned in Psalm 105. I didn't know that. And the Lord talks about his journey. If you read the NLT, he talks about his journey as being one of being tested by the Lord. You don't see that in Genesis. You don't see.
No, you don't see that.
But
it's interesting observation you say, because now that you talk about it, I'm like,
yeah,
I never drew connections with that.
Yeah.
But
so when we do that research, I was surprised. So Psalm 105 says, I believe, is it verse 12? I did confirm. It says, until the time came to fulfill his dreams, the Lord tested Joseph's character. And I'm thinking, Genesis does not tell us that. So, and I kept thinking, could it be that the Lord is testing our character through all the struggles you're having? And we contrasted his life with his brother Reuben, which many people don't talk about.
Yeah.
His life appears very under the radar, but you see how the blessing of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob was actually meant to be Reuben's, and how Reuben lost it because of sleeping with Bilhah.
Because he chose another lifestyle.
Another life, and how it cost him, and how sexual sin costs your destiny, and how if Joseph, let's say, if Joseph had slept with Mrs. Potiphar, I think the perks would have been job security, Usishike Jose, everyone else is being fired, but not Jose, Chanana Jose,
Chanana Jose,
and
yes.
Joseph would have gained job security, but he would have forever remained a slave.
Yeah.
It was not God's will for him to be a slave. It was God's will for him to go through the difficulty of the prison, in the prison, meet his destiny helper. So you realize that sexual sin keeps you away from your destiny helpers, get to Pharaoh's position, and save the world. And if Joseph hadn't done that, I think God would have raised someone else.
So what Ernest is trying to say, if you guys don't know about this, if you go to the Bible, in the book of Genesis, start from about chapter 20, from the book of chapter 20 till the end, chapter 50, 51.
Yes.
You're going to read about, just this story, the context before Joseph, and then when he was born, circumstance around his birth, and then, who he became. But interesting, you've said that. So, dude, we've been talking about marriage. The previous episode, we talked about marriage. And now, pretty much the principles where millennials see themselves in marriage. So I want to ask you, just a follow-up to our previous conversation. Again, if you want to catch that, you just go to the previous episode, and it'll give context to what we're talking about today. Sex and sexuality, in many ways, is a big thing in marriages. And where I come from, at least the perspective I come from, rather, when I'm hearing this, or when I see people talking about the challenges in marriage, many people say it's sex, and I'm of the opinion it's not. I think sex is just an indicator of other things in the marriage. And last time when you're here, you talked about the covenant perspective of marriage and the consumer marriage. Maybe those are the issues in it. But why is sex such a big thing in marriage?
I think it's because it's the crown of intimacy. You've got spiritual intimacy between a man and his wife, connecting at the deepest, the utmost levels, the deepest levels of who they are, their spirits. Okay, and then you've got emotional intimacy, their souls connecting, and so the crown of it is the physical intimacy, and that's sexual in nature. And the act of marriage, the act of sex, has got the power to traverse beyond your physical being. It affects your soul, it affects your mind, your will, your emotions. It affects you spiritually. And so we're talking about a very powerful act. We're talking about an act that mirrors God's life-giving force. You know, it's a big deal. It's powerful. It's intimate. And so if it goes wrong, I think it has the capacity to really rile up a marriage and to really cause a lot of problems.
So with that in context, how has your average millennial Gen Z been educated or exposed to sex?
So,
and that in marriage in itself?
If you ask me, millennials have been heavily, they've been hypersexualized before marriage. I don't know, perhaps the oncoming generation, but I would say if you look at the...
This is you guys. You guys are
this
millennials.
Is us.
Yes.
Yeah, okay? So if you look at the generations before us, Gen Xers, you guys going on, you'll realize that I don't think you're exposed to as much nudity in the name of entertainment as millennials were. Millennials have been hyper-sexualized on screen. Men and women are seeing a lot of nudity virtually before they even see it physically. And that has got an effect on them. There's a website called Fight the New Drug. And they... The new.
As in
Numpia. Yeah. The new drug. And they did a study and they showed that the parts in our brain that light up when we are addicted to cocaine are the same parts of our brain that light up when we're addicted to porn. Sexual content, sexual explicit content has got an adverse effect on our physiology, on our psychology. It's detrimental. And so you've got millennials who are heavily hypersexualized prior to getting into marriage. And so you can imagine they come into marriage chemically imbalanced. They come into marriage psychologically lopsided, spiritually confused, and you expect those marriages to work?
I have a theory.
Yeah.
This is more me being a social observer, just thinking about history. So most of these millennials grew up in the 90s. So they were born in the 80s and the 90s. But this is the height of the HIV/AIDS pandemic. And so GAVA and all these organizations were inundating our media centers and all that with issues about sex.
Yeah.
Everything about sex.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. And when we were growing up, this is the 70s and 80s, we're not hearing this.
Yeah.
So come the 90s and early 2000s, it's just about sex. Let's talk about sex, baby.
Let's talk about you and me.
And it was there.
Yeah.
And so for a young mind at that point, like for us who are older, we had already begun to know how to put up the filters. But for you who's growing up as a millennial at that time, there were no filters. This is something that you're going. So that also made you much more exposed.
I really agree with you, because I remember having our first, if you call it sex education class, in class 5. I remember one of our teachers, Mrs. Seme, coming and telling us, this is how a girl gets pregnant. And I kept thinking, why am I learning this as a class 5-year-old? And we're being told how, men, this happens to you, women, this happens to you. And it was good because it built that awareness. But I just think at times, she did it well. She did it very well. Okay, but there's an exposure that at times I don't think is done well. there's a way in which more curiosity, and that's why I talked about porn, because porn is exposure, but it's exposure that is not done well. It's exposure that is demeaning, define the whole idea of a woman being a person, objectifying her. And I think my generation have been exposed to a lot of that. I don't think many of us had Mrs. Semes who taught them the right way. I don't think even parents, have that conversation with children. This is your body, this is what happens. I think the education we taught is nikupate na kijana. So you watched that documentary that was going around. The time Raphael Tuju was doing this documentary on, they were showing the diseases and
yes, he had an organization. Raphael Tuju those days had an organization called Ace Communications.
Yeah.
And so they used to produce
we were
a lot of that content.
We were scared into purity.
The HIV.
And then there was now the whole purity culture.
Yes.
At that time of, sign the purity pledge form. I don't know if you guys had that.
Yes, we did.
You did?
In fact, we championed it. Us guys are the ones who championed it, man.
I remember going
no ringing without dinging. Yes, no dinging without ringing.
No dinging without ringing.
Yes,
yes. And going for TSO, totally sold out, and you're being told, what's the entry? You're being told TSO is a concert. You're hearing all your favorite artists are performing for 6 hours, and you're being told entry is free. You're like, wait, what?
Yes.
And you are told the only thing you need is an ATM card. You're like, wait, what do you mean ATM card? I'm not even 18.
Yes.
Or ATM is an abstinence till marriage card. So pick it at this place, sign it. So I signed that card, not because I want to be pure.
Because you want to
I
go
want
for
to see Giuliani perform.
Hey, at least we tried, man. Those were trying. We were trying to.
Intentions were pure. It worked for some.
I hope it worked for some.
Yeah, it did. It worked for me.
Okay. But you went to watch Giuliani, right?
Me, I wanted to watch Kineko Dida.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's been that exposure.
Yes.
And it's been heavy, it's been intense. And I also think we've not had now wholesome teaching I think at the campus level. I was privileged to go to a private university where we had a whole semester's worth of teaching. Okay, that's in class. We had a human sexuality class, but even off class, we had a whole week dedicated every year, a whole week dedicated to just understanding the truth about sex. Okay, so I would say I benefited from that. The average university in Kenya did not have that kind of benefit, and so these are the kind of people who are getting into marriage. Yeah.
So what are our proclivities? What are our tendencies with all this being sexualized or being exposed? What are some of our tendencies that we bring into with regards to sex?
Okay, so women are only worthy of love if they are sexually appealing. That's what we.
So women are only
worthy of love
if
they're sexually appealing. We've bought that life from the culture.
Yeah.
If she's not sexually appealing, she's not worthy of love.
Okay.
And so you've got a generation of millennials who are obsessed. The whole thing about in your time you call them sugar daddy, sugar mummies, sponsors.
Yes. Now they're mubabas.
Mubabas and mumamas. But that sponsor thing is come from the idea that a campus woman is considered to be at her peak. Why? Simply because of her physical well-being.
Yes.
That she's at her sexual peak.
Yes.
And she believes she's at the peak of womanhood. We are objectifying her.
Yeah.
And we believe that she'll only be worthy of love from a man if she's sexually appealing. So we lean towards that.
So what are other proclivities, other tendencies?
The other one is that men are only worthy of being in a relationship with if they are successful. So women are sex objects, men are success objects. Men are success objects because the women, the women who want to get, the women want to give themselves away. They must get something in return. The other thing is that
another tendency
is that relationships are transactional. So you've got people who say, I took on a date and she didn't even give me a kiss. What do you mean? So we believe that she owes me some form of sexual affection because of that. And you've got women who are going for dates and they're meeting honorable, chivalrous men who do not want any sexual contact. And they get shocked. He didn't even want anything from me. Oh, he must be gay. No, he's straight, but it's just that he's chivalrous.
Oh, by the way, here's a disclaimer.
Yeah.
These are two men on a couch talking about sex and sex in marriage. So if you're not part of our agenda, I apologize in advance. We're only giving a perspective. And I want to say this, should you think there would be somebody of
The
feminine side
Yes.
who could give that of an honest nature in itself,
Bring them
please
on.
let me know in the
Yeah.
DM. We would like to have them on to be able to have this. So I'm just giving a disclaimer there before you judge me harshly. I'm okay to be judged, but yeah, let's go on.
Yeah.
Yes.
So those we slant towards those proclivities. We look at that. I think another one that I would say is that if a relationship is not sexual, then it's not worth it. We strongly believe that. You hear people saying, so what are you doing if you're not having sex? So the whole idea of, I think in your generation, in Gen X, the whole idea of, Susan got pregnant. That is a topic of discussion. How did Susan got pregnant? What? Akiwa na nani peke yake? Who is the father? Committee meeting wazee tuonge. What's going on? Yeah. Susan, we raised you as a Christian. Yeah. Susan, what's going on? Susan, who will take care of your child? Nowadays you hear Susan got pregnant. Oh, really? We even throw her baby shower. We don't know who the father is.
So where I grew up, my peers, if they, especially for the woman, if she gets pregnant, there's shame about it.
Yeah.
You're saying for your generation and younger, that is not there.
Yes, and I'm not advocating for people to be shamed, but I'm talking about the whole idea of just the sanctity of sexuality.
So, but for us, ours, there was shame.
There was shame.
Yes.
And I'm talking about, there's a healthy fear and there's a healthy shame.
Yes.
Okay. There's a bad fear and there's a bad, you can be coerced to do something and you can be scared and bullied. That's a negative fear.
Okay.
Okay. And you can also, you can have a negative kind of shame where we deride you, we make fun of you. What's wrong with you? You failed us. No, I'm not talking about that kind of shame. I'm talking about the kind of healthy fear that when you're standing at the edge of a cliff, it's fear that tells you be careful, you're gonna die, you're gonna fall off, So your prefrontal cortex, is what tells you careful. And there's a kind of shame where, how can I do this to my wife? How can I do this to my children? So my generation is losing that healthy side of it. Okay. That healthy consideration of the other person. Yeah.
So with all these tendencies, proclivities, and understanding about sex, we bring these things into marriage. So tell me how it's playing out, man. You sit with couples.
Yes.
Many of them who are millennials. And the Gen Zs who are now getting married, at least the older ones. I see Gen Z, a lot is women who are getting married. I don't know many Gen Z guys who are married, but
what do you mean? Who are the women marrying? See, they're marrying men. They're marrying up. They're marrying older.
They're marrying older people.
Okay,
so you have a Gen Z who's 24, 25, who's getting married to a 27, 30-year-old man.
Yeah.
So that's a millennial at the tail end itself. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I get what you're saying.
So in essence, that's what I'm seeing. So I'm wondering, how is this playing out? How is your view? What you've described, in many ways, it's a general idea, but how is this thing playing out in marriage?
So number one, it leaves the marriage defenseless in this sense.
What do you mean defenseless?
So I'll explain. If you've been hypersexualized, I remember I talked about the prefrontal cortex. Maybe I should focus a bit on that. One of the effects of being hypersexualized through consuming pornography, sexual explicit content, is that your prefrontal cortex wears out. And your prefrontal cortex it's like it rubs off. Your prefrontal cortex is what's responsible for helping you make sober decisions are risk-free.
Rational decisions.
Rational, think.
Yes.
If that part is fading, it's weakening. The nerves on that particular area are not functioning as optimally as they should. Your capacity to make risky decisions are high, and that's why it's been shown. There's a correlation between imbibing sexually explicit content and poor performance in work and making less money than you potentially could make. Okay, people who are addicted to porn they're not as successful as they could be.
They're not as
financially.
Productive.
They're not as productive. And as a result, they're not as successful. Okay, so. And that success is not just financially. That success affects the marriage. Your marriage is not as successful. Why? Because the dangers that your prefrontal cortex should warn you about, such as boundaries with people of the opposite sex, are not very clear. So you are having people in my generation who are saying, this is my wife, Waturi, but this is my best friend, Esther. I mean, surely, Goi, have you ever seen your grandmother with a best friend of the opposite sex? I mean, just think about it. I don't see that in your generation. Goi, I know men around you. I've never seen you say you have a best friend who's a lady. What do you think that does to me if I have my wife Waturi, but Esther is my best friend? You know,
Esther is my best friend.
no, you can't use sugarcane as a walking stick.
You can't. You know, that's a saying in Doluo. Yes,
Yeah.
you can't use a
You're
sugarcane as a
kidding
walking
yourself.
stick. Yes.
So in the book of Proverbs, chapter 30, Agur, one of the wise men, says this. There are 4 things I don't understand. This is one of the wise people. These are people who made it to scripture.
Okay,
They are admitting there are things they don't know.
So, okay, say it.
I don't understand the way of a ship on the sea.
Yeah.
I don't understand the way of an eagle in the sky.
Yes.
I don't understand the way of a snake on a rock.
Yes.
Finally, I don't understand the way of a man and a woman falling in love.
Yes.
He's saying the chemistry between the ship and the sea, the eagle and the sky, the snake and the rock is so seamless. That same chemistry happens between a man and a woman. He's basically saying what Solomon said in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. Guard your heart.
It's a wellspring of life.
Guard your heart.
Yes.
Be careful.
Yes.
Millennials are not guarding their hearts. You can't be having this. Esther cannot be my best friend, and my marriage will work. I'm not guarding my heart.
Yes.
You get. So these are some of the.
So, by the way, your wife is called Waturi, right?
Waturi,
Yes,
yeah. Waturi is my wife. You know,
Yes.
so this is in generic Esther as an
Understood,
example. Yeah,
right.
So these are some of the things that are happening, and you find that So Anis is fiercely in a counseling session, fiercely defending Esther, saying, "But we grew up together."
So our boundaries are like fluid.
Our boundaries are they're fluid. We do not honor our partners. We do not give them the respect they deserve.
How else does it show up?
Okay, so the other way it shows up is, of course, the chances of divorce are infinitely higher. Statistically, anyone who consumes sexual explicit content increases their chance of divorce by 300%. Okay? The other thing is that statistically, again, it's been shown, men and women who consume sexually explicit content have favorable attitudes towards rape.
No.
Yeah. When a man, especially men more than women, when a man is consuming sexual explicit content, and when I say that, some of you are just thinking porn. I'm also talking about those series that you watch that show a lot of nudity. When a man consumes that, his attitudes towards rape and molestation of women become favorable.
So you're numbed to the humanness of this individual.
I mean, recently...
That's what you're trying to say.
Yes, exactly.
If I'm exposed to this, I no longer see the human around this particular thing. So I can be tendency to even be violent to this person.
Let me tell you, recently Nairobi women went out marching on the streets because of how they've been brutally murdered in Airbnbs. Yes. You don't see that in previous generations. It's happening in our generation. And also, you don't see so some of the slogans coming out of like stop killing our women. She's someone's wife, she's someone's sister, she's someone's so my question is, how about she's someone, period?
Yes.
She's someone.
She's someone.
That's enough. She doesn't need to be tied to a man for her to have value. She has value by being made in the image of God. Porn, sexual explicit content makes us be more favorable. And this is the other thing. Women who consume that entertainment don't know it, but they also lean towards being enemies of their fellow women.
You know what? As you speak about this, I'm like, I don't know about you, but my kids, I keep them from watching just general free-to-air TV. Yeah. Leave alone free-to-air. Because I'm like, the standard of what is kosher that threshold has gone so low. And I'm just...
I agree with you,
Goy.
I agree with you.
I'm like, and even for the entertainment, for, community entertainment, you'll say, oh, we have community entertainment where it's a family gathering. But the kind of music that is being played, it's sexually explicit music content, and our kids are there and they're listening to it.
And this is generic mainstream.
Yes.
I'm talking about,
what you're trying to say, what I'm just trying to say is, even at that young age, you're being exposed to that thing it's working on your
prefrontal cortex.
prefrontal
That's
cortex.
just
So
one part.
numbing it over time.
So that's just one part. Let me tell you what happens now in the
rest
rest
of the
brain. So we've got chemicals. Okay.
Yes.
So one is dopamine. Dopamine is a feel-good chemical.
Yes.
All right.
It's the happy.
Yeah, the happy chemical.
Happy
you know,
hormone, right.
the way dopamine is meant to work ideally in
Yes.
our bodies is through a reward cycle.
Yes.
Meaning, learn for 4 years, I graduate. The graduation is a euphoric experience,
Yes.
rush of dopamine.
Yes.
I cook a meal, I eat it. Reward.
Yes.
You know, I caught a woman, I marry her. Reward. And the peaks of dopamine, the best, let me say the cleanest dopamine comes from reward. But you can have a cheap dopamine. You know, and a cheap dopamine can come from circumventing the reward cycle and just generating pleasure. So when you watch sexual explicit content, you force yourself to experience quote unquote reward without having put in any kind of effort. And so your brain is accelerated through the pleasure. And what the brain does is that it tells itself, this feels good, let's do it again. Because that's the same thing the brain tells itself every time it experiences dopamine. Let's do this again. Let's succeed again. Let's get a second degree. Let's do this again. So with porn, it's a shortcut. Let's do this again. What does that do? It makes you want to desire a repeat of the activity. You keep watching. For the men, testosterone. Okay? Because our testosterone is what's responsible for attraction to females. And for the women, estrogen. That's what makes them attracted to males. So when you've got men watching that, you've got excess testosterone produced in your body. Because sexually, when you watch those women, your body produces testosterone, you become sexually excited. Your body has got a healthy production of testosterone that helps you function healthily as a man. When you watch that content, you overproduce the testosterone in your body.
Overexcited.
It's overexcited. As a result, you become hypersexual. You find that even women who are not trying to sexually tease you, it feels like they're teasing you. And so you find that, you said, even the Muslims who wear the Batman,
yes.
You find that a man is struggling. And so you hear men in our generation saying, oh, it's the way she's dressed.
And it's not her fault.
It's the way she's dressed. And let's be honest, there are women who can dress skimpily, who can dress scantily, but you'll find that even modestly dressed women become a problem.
Yes.
So as a result of that, you can never come down. The worst in all those chemicals is a protein called delta phos B, and phos, F-O-S, not phos like the Air Force. Delta phos B. Delta phos B is a protein that neurologists call the addiction protein. It's responsible for reinforcing habits and causing a desire for them in short wavelengths. So let me explain. When I watch porn, delta phos B is produced, and this is what it tells the brain. I want you to watch that porn again now. You see, dopamine says, let's watch it later. But delta phos B says, let's watch it now. Delta phos B is impatient. It wants it now. And so it produces what neurologists call compulsive behavior. Compulsive behavior is that I want something and I can't settle until I get it now. So you've seen the way alcoholics at times can shake.
Yeah.
That's delta phos B. They want it now. So I want it now. What do I do? Because I want the sexually explicit content now, I do anything to get it. I manipulate a woman. I get her drunk. I, drag her. I do it because I want
Just
it.
you want that now.
Or I watch porn in funny places.
Or I go and masturbate.
I go and masturbate, or I watch porn and my kid is here. I have no care. Eventually, what happens is that you can't break out of it, because for you to break out, neurologists will tell you, for you to have just a breather, you need to abstain from the sexually explicit content for at least 8 weeks. Not for you to be free of the addiction, just for you to get breathing room and not keep getting that now. So let's say you've been watching. So week 1, and you say, I'm going to abstain. I'm going to get rid of this porn addiction. I'm not going to watch that kind of, I need to work on my marriage. So week 1, delta phos B says, no, watch that series now. You abstain. Week 2, now. Week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, now. So the compulsion is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Then you get to week 8. And just when you get into week 8, let's say you decide, I've been so good. Acha niingie Instagram niangalie kitu. The moment you watch fresh content, fresh delta phos B is produced. So you are at now, you're just about to kill, then it comes back now. You enslave yourself. And so you hear people saying, I've been trying to break free from this porn. I go clean for a month, then I fall back. I go clean for 6 weeks, and then I fall back. You are in a cycle that is very hard to, you're in an iron cage. It's very hard to break out of it. And so you can imagine this is someone who's married. The other thing that I forgot to mention is that sexually explicit content makes you dissatisfied with your partner, especially for the men, because everything in porn and Hollywood is scripted.
Right.
It's scripted. And so it paints a fantasy, a reality, and that grossly makes you disfavorable towards your own partner.
So you have said, how does this inform sex in marriage?
Yeah. So again, if I may go back to the whole consumer and covenant.
Yeah.
The ideal intimacy between a man and a woman is when they come and they serve one another. When I come to my wife and I do everything to pleasure her, to get her excited, to get her, to get to that peak. I said Trakidogo, The 5 Sex Needs of Men and Women by Dr. Gary and Barbara Roseberg. In it, they say one of the top needs for a man in having intimacy with his wife is mutual satisfaction. When you are exposed to this kind of nudity, you are not thinking about her first. You're thinking about
one way.
you first.
Yes.
So she can't get satisfied because you are focused on yourself. And but then another repercussion of that is premature ejaculation. So it brings medical problems. Okay. It brings arousal deficiencies. Okay. And so for the women, it brings tension. Things like vaginismus, where a woman is tense. That can come from just mental struggles, but porn can influence that. Where a woman is no longer sexually free, she's feeling constrained because of the fears that are brought about by this kind of entertainment. So your marriage sexual life dies. Your marriage sexual life is just a mere performance. And even when you are trying to really have it, it's just trying to get from the other person, not trying to serve the other person. Yeah.
I've heard this statement, men are men, watacheza nje. Is that a fair statement?
No, it's not. It's fair to certain men. It's fair to the average man. It's fair to the average man. In fact, it could be unfair because the average man could even be worse than that. But I don't think it's true. I think one of the hallmarks of masculinity is that a real man controls his impulses.
Hebu just say that again.
A real man controls his impulses.
So what do you say that about masculinity?
It's a hallmark of masculinity.
A hallmark of masculinity
is that a man is able to rein his impulses.
Yes.
He's able to say no to impulsive feelings, desires that he has. The hallmark of masculinity is that you're able to temper them, you're able to say no to them. Okay. When you get money, there's an impulsive need to buy, to spend. When you're happy, there's maybe an impulsive need to say things, do things. When you're angry, when you're sexually excited. Because who is a rapist? A rapist is a man who has who is impulsive sexually and has no control over his loins. But who is a gentleman? A gentleman is a man who understands this environment is getting me sexually excited, and if I stay here, I will not be in control of my impulses. I will leave that environment, or I will draw boundaries with that woman. Okay? And so that statement is true for anyone who does not subscribe to authentic masculinity. Yeah.
Dude, man, I was going to ask many more questions, but then you've just summarized it right there. Thank you very much. It's rare for women to cheat or to be unfaithful in a relationship.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Again, yes and no. Generally speaking, women get... so a study I read from a book called Our Sexuality, and they were looking at women who are married and women who are not married, and they were looking at the sexual cycle, from arousal, plateau, orgasm, then resolution. And they were looking at which women experience more orgasm than the other. And they realized married women experience it more than unmarried women who are sexually active. And it was shocking. And so they investigated it further, and Carla and Bauer in their book, they try and find out why that is so. And it was shown that women, when they feel emotionally safe, when they feel stable, when women have stability, they're able to perform sexually. And one of the biggest arenas for stability for women is a marriage institution. She's safe, protected by society, protected by family, protected by children. It provides that safe environment. So it wasn't surprising to them that the results came that way. Okay? So when a woman has that stability, it's very rare for her to try and destroy it, because the odds will be against her. First of all, society is very heavily
That's
biased.
harsh.
You know, when a man leaves his marriage, you go like, men will be men. When a woman does it, So it's not right, but it is what it is.
Yes, that's the way the life.
It is what it is.
That's the way life is.
So women knowing that should, I think many women know that. And so because of that, in fact, even in counseling
It's actually
sessions,
a deterrent. Just the way things are, it's
Yeah.
a deterrent.
women are more likely to pursue third-party help to work on their marriages than men are.
Yes.
Okay. If you look at worldwide cases of depression and suicide, men are at 66%. Why? Women talk, they reach out, they ask questions. So what that does is that, so you could debunk that statement by saying, yes, it is true when women look at the cost-benefit analysis of the whole idea of marriage. If I step out, I lose. However, you've got a new breed of women who, because of the empowerment they're receiving financially, all right, they can earn more than the man. They can bring in more money than the man. It's bringing out a character side of them that you realize perhaps has been there all along. You know, Goy, at times you don't do certain things simply because you don't have the money to do them. So you realize that you're not righteous, you're just broke, you know? You get money today, Goy. You start having fresh temptations.
It brings out something in you.
Yeah, it does. So I would point it back to the same thing as the men, okay? Because I believe also a woman, ideal femininity is defined by a degree of self-control of their impulses. And so a woman who decides not to be honorable, the Bible says a foolish woman destroys her own house with her own hands, you know, but a wise woman builds her house.
Bro, I think we should end there.
Okay.
Simply because we don't have time. But I'd like to unpack this a bit more. Even just off air, you know, Kahawa Nagoi, now
Yes.
at a different place. But I want to say I really appreciate your insights on this. I see where your biases are, especially about the deviance for us men and our responsibility when it comes to sexual purity and marriage and its consequences. Man, maybe just talk to Jamas out there watching as a parting shot.
Yeah. I think it's good to let men know that you can be free. You can be free from any sexual struggle that contains you. I think it's good to admit that it's not healthy to be sexually perverse. And you can band along with other men and be free. Femininity, and I don't know if I'm stretching this by saying this, Goy, but a woman can get into maturity just by being in this world, because the way life is, a woman will be, her periods will come, she'll be required to take up certain responsibilities, so she'll be forced to mature up.
Circumstances
Force women
Yes.
to mature into femininity. Nothing naturally compels a man into maturity. For a man to be a masculine, mature man, it must be intentional. And so don't sit because no one is coming to save you. You must rise up, pick up your mat and walk. You must look for other men and join forces with men and walk the walk of masculinity towards maturity. It's not going to come naturally. It's going to be intentional for you as a man. And that's the difference.
I told you guys, just be watching Kahawa Nagoi. You'll get such insights from this guy. And this guy is not even 50. He's talking like he's older than me. It's Kahawa Nagoi. Tell a friend, tell another friend about this podcast. Thank you for watching. Ernest, thank you.
Thank you.
And I hope to have you back here another time.
I'll come.
God bless you. Peace. We're out.